You got to get here early if you want a back seat. Good morning. I'm glad you're here. In business, and in sociology, and frankly in a lot of things, there is something called a tipping point. You ever heard that before? The tipping point? That's when something stops being just kind of maybe famous, maybe not famous, to the point where it really starts catching on. Let me give you an example. When was the last time you said, I think I'll go and do a search on the internet? No. You say, along with the rest of the planet, let's Google it. Well, there was a time when there was no Google, so nobody could Google anything. It was only after Google showed up, and pretty soon it got to the point where, even I have a bunch of buddies of mine now and again. We'll get together and we'll be talking about something, a movie or something like that going on, and one of the guys will say, well, to the Google. We're going to Google it. And that happens in business, and that's the point. In fact, they even have this range of adoption of new technology now that they use, and they have these early adopters. These are the folks who buy the brand new stuff no matter how much it costs. They're the ones who bought the first big screen television. They're the ones who bought the first projection TV. Do you remember those things? Projection television. They're the early adopters. And then you've got the folks that come along a little bit later, and then you've got the folks that come along and it starts getting real popular, and then right there at the very top of the scale is the phrase tipping point. That's when it falls over and starts just being ubiquitous everywhere you go. Well, that isn't just true in business, that's also true in history. It's true in nations. No one can doubt that the huge tipping point in the last generation was World War II. It was a huge tipping point. The whole world changed. Did you realize that the United States was a developing nation before World War II? It was a growing nation. It was a nation that was becoming more and more powerful. But it was only after World War II that things really took off for the United States. Not only does history have tipping points, societies have tipping points. Nobody can look at today's society and what is now commonplace and completely acceptable that 50 years ago you would not even believe that something like this would happen. I never will forget in my own instance when I told a friend of mine, a fellow who grew up in my area, that I was marrying a Greek girl. What? Why are you marrying? You're marrying a Greek girl? Well, yeah. Well, but she's not white. And I looked at the guy like he had a third hand. What's wrong with you, man? Do you know what year it is? You see what I'm saying? So there's tipping points in society. I guarantee you, folks, you've got a tipping point in your own life. There are moments in your life, now you may not have realized it when it was going on. You may not have realized how important it was when it was happening to you, but looking back, you look back and said, that's a spot. That's the place where my life changed. That's the place where my life took on a whole new meaning. You met that certain someone, and you started a career that you loved. There's tipping points even in your own life where your life is never the same after that moment comes. Well, brothers and sisters, this morning, as you can tell, we have so many folks here in the house today. Thank you for being here. It's an honor to have you here. We're at a tipping point. We're at a tipping point not in history, not just in history, not just in society, not just in the little nation of Israel that was occupied by the Roman army. We're at a tipping point in the universe on this special day, this eve of the nativity of Jesus Christ. On this moment, at this moment, we're at a tipping point. In fact, I'm going to make a bold statement. I'm going to say that everything that happened in human history before the birth of Jesus happened to bring us to the birth of Jesus. And everything that happened after the birth of Jesus happened because of the birth of Jesus. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say we should probably just arrange our calendar around that moment. Maybe we can call before the birth of Jesus, before BC, before the birth of Christ. And after the birth of Jesus, let's use the Latin, Anno Domini, after the coming of the Lord. Look at this moment, folks, and then ask yourself a question. Why is the birth of a little baby to a Jewish family in an occupied nation 2,000 plus years ago the tipping point for human history? Why? Because, brothers and sisters, it isn't because a baby had never been born before. A baby has been being born before and after all the time. Babies everywhere. You can't swing a dead cat without a baby. Everywhere they got babies. Babies all over the place. I remember many years ago in the 70s when they were talking about the world being overpopulated, that once we hit 7 billion people on the planet, the earth is going to just destroy itself. Swing and a miss. If they can't tell me what's going to be happening in a few days on the weather, how in the world are they going to tell me in 100 years? But that's just me. And it wasn't that a baby was born, and it wasn't that the baby's birth was very auspicious. It certainly wasn't. It wasn't an auspicious birth at all. In fact, there was no place for them to have the baby born, and so guess what happened? Jesus was born in a cave and laid, we say, in a manger. That's a nice way of saying feeding trough. He was laid in the feeding trough where they put the hay for the cows and the donkeys and the sheep. That's where Jesus was laid, in the feeding trough. But then again, and I'll give you a little hint for the rest of the homily, where else do you put food? Those of you who get it, God bless you. Those of you who don't, stick with me. We'll be there in a second. Jesus Christ's birth was not some fancy schmancy thing. In fact, it was very humble. Jesus Christ's birth was a birth that is very, very humble and very inauspicious. The 3 wise men that did show up a few years later after the Lord had been born, when they went to King Herod to ask, where is he who was born King of the Jews? Even after 3 years, you guys realize that the wise men got there a few years after the birth, right? I'm not in trouble, am I? I don't want to bust anybody's bubble, but I mean, that's what happened. A few years after Jesus was born, it was so inauspicious that not even the people of Jerusalem, the Jews that had been prepared for 6,000 years to expect the coming of the Messiah, and they missed it. Very inauspicious. And so at this tipping point of human history, where, folks, after that night in Bethlehem, this planet will never be the same again. Period. Full stop. End of discussion. Even people who don't believe in God have to live in a world that is so heavily influenced by this baby born in Bethlehem's manger that they have to be angry at him all the time. And so even the Jews who had been taught to expect him, and they even asked, the wise men asked, where is the Messiah supposed to be born, this King of the Jews? And Herod had to ask the Bible guys, the theologians, say, hey, fellas, where does the book say? Oh, it'll be in Bethlehem. They knew where he was going to be born, and they still missed him. They missed him because their lives were so focused on smaller things that they missed the most important thing. Their lives were focused on making sure they had enough money, or they lived in the right house, or they had the right car, or they had the right spouse, or they had the 401k healthy. Well, maybe not a 401k. I don't know that those were back there then, but you get my point. They were focused on a million things, and they missed the coming of the Messiah. 6,000 years they had been told, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready. For 6,000 years. Get ready. And when he came, they missed him. But the birth of Jesus Christ changed the world. And it makes perfect sense that they laid him in a manger. That's where food goes. Just like in the First Testament where the Lord sent manna from heaven to feed the children of Israel in the desert. So now God has come himself in the form of one of us to become the true food that fills the true hunger of every heart that is in this room right now. In fact, let me be bold again and say that you'll try to fill that hunger with everything else, and you will be less than satisfied until you find Jesus Christ. The tipping point of all of human history. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter where you were born, no matter your education, your income, no matter where your station is in life, the food that satisfies the true hunger of your soul, what keeps you up at night, what makes you afraid, the satisfaction of that which makes you truly understand why you're here, is a baby laid in a manger 2,000 plus years ago in a stable in Bethlehem. That's the reason why, brothers and sisters, there has never been a moment since the coming of Jesus Christ that Jesus Christ isn't the most relevant topic on any human lips. You're going to decide who you say Jesus is every day of your life. The angels said he was the Messiah. The shepherds heard to go to Bethlehem and look for a baby in a manger. The wise men called him the King of the Jews. The angel told Mary, he's the Son of God. God in the flesh, one of us, to come among us and feed us what our hearts are truly hungry for. This morning, as we celebrate the feast of the Nativity, as we confront the whole tipping point of human history, the reason why you're alive today is because God wants you to know about this event and wants your life to be measured against the importance and the significance of this event. And until your life is measured against the importance and the significance of the coming of this child, you will live your life asleep, just like those folks who missed his coming the first time. And on this Christmas Eve, I want you to rouse your hearts and come face to face with the tipping point in human history. Let's be honest, folks. He's the tipping point of every one of our lives. This morning is a tipping point in your day, in your life, in your family's life. Today is a tipping point. What will you do?